Three Al Jazeera journalists detained in Egypt will make their first court appearance next week. They're accused of spreading false news and having links to a terrorist organization, charges the Al Jazeera network categorically denies. And as Imtiaz Tayyab now explains, the international pressure on Egypt to release the journalists is gaining huge momentum.
Mohammed Fahmy, Peter Greste and Baher Mohammed are scheduled to make their first court appearance on February 20th. The Al Jazeera English journalists are accused of spreading lies harmful to state security and having links to the Muslim Brotherhood, an organization the Egyptian government classified as a terrorist group in December. Al Jazeera rejects the charges and is demanding their unconditional and immediate release.
We categorically deny that they were involved in any kind of malicious spreading of lies about Egypt or that they were colluding with a terrorist organization.
Peter Greste is an award-winning correspondent who has reported across Africa. He previously worked for the BBC. Mohammed Fahmy has worked for CNN, the New York Times, and the Red Cross. He's also an accomplished author. And Baher Mohammed is a freelance producer who spent most of last year working for Al Jazeera. Their detention by the Egyptian authorities has sparked a global social media campaign. The hashtag #FreeAJE staff has gained major momentum on Twitter and Facebook. Prominent journalists, activists, and political figures have been demanding their release and for an end to the crackdown on journalists.
Well, no one outside the military regime will believe in these charges, because we have been accustomed in dictatorial regimes like the times of Ben Ali of Tunisia, Hosni Mubarak before Assad, that these regimes formulate very, very clumsy and general accusations which will not meet any standards or any international standards and will not be accepted by any credible institutions or government or democratic government in the world.
Abdullah El-Shami, a journalist from our sister network, has also been in prison since last July. He hasn't been formally charged. Last month, Egyptian prosecutors indicted 20 people over allegations of spreading false news, bringing Egypt into disrepute, and conspiring with terrorists. Not all of them are employed by Al Jazeera. Al Jazeera English has consistently covered both sides of the story in Egypt and has posted all the channel's reports on its website. Imtiaz Tayyab, Al Jazeera.
Well, joining us now to talk more about this is Salah Morgan, who's from the Egyptian American Rule of Law Association. That's a non-profit organization providing legal expertise on Egypt's post-revolution reforms. And he joins me from New York. Thank you for being with us. So talk us through the legal process here. When is their first appearance and what's expected to take place?
Sure. Well, the chief prosecutor has announced that February 20 is set to begin the initial phase of this process, which is actually the beginning of the trial, and which is approximately 53 days after since these journalists have been detained. Now, that process, at least under Egypt's criminal code, and we're assuming that Egypt's criminal code applies here, would require that a three-judge panel preside over the proceedings. Two of those three judges must agree to convict. The process, although the criminal code does not set out a particular standard or burden of proof on the prosecutor, Egypt's highest court has said that convictions must be based on quote-unquote certainty, and any doubts need to be resolved in favor of the defendants.
And as for, many of the journalists, as we've been saying over the last few days, are foreigners who are not currently inside Egypt. What happens regarding them, since they physically are not going to appear in court?
Well, in that case, where individuals are not present within the country for trial, it's likely in this case that Egypt will try those individuals in absentia, which means essentially without their appearance. Now, Egypt has a past history of conducting criminal trials in absentia, but there's an important point here. Egypt's criminal code prescribes a 10-year statute of limitations for felonies. So for those individuals that are not currently in Egypt, but intend or hope to travel to Egypt sometime within the next 10 years, could face criminal prosecution under these charges.
Now, it's always been Al Jazeera's contention that these charges are patently false, but it also does seem that they're simply not very clear. I mean, how is this going to play out then in the court?
You know, it's a good question. At this point, it's not very clear, and I would agree. The charges that they are facing right now is being linked to the Muslim Brotherhood, which until recently held power over the country. They're also being charged with airing false information and for portraying Egypt in a state of civil war. Well, even if those allegations or charges were true, it would seem to run in violation of Egypt's constitution, which was just ratified a few weeks ago by 98% of voters. And I can just mention a few articles of Egypt's constitution that it would violate. Article 65, which talks about freedom of thought. Article 70, which talks about freedom of press. Article 71, which talks about freedom of publication. And I believe Article 72 talks about the independence of press institutions. So this is an opportunity for Egypt to truly embrace its new constitution, but unfortunately it seems as if the Egyptian government is running counter to what it is they just did a few weeks ago.
Well, thanks very much for your analysis on this. Mark Salah Morgan joining us from New York. Thanks very much.
Thank you.